Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and it looks like we just got some pretty good news for 3D Mario this year. Yes, that's right, the new 3D Mario we've been hoping for, we've been theorizing on. We've gotten a promising update to a rumor from what most will probably consider to be the most reliable of leakers or insiders there are, Nate the Hate. And what's being implied here is something he talked about a little while ago about, 3D Mario coming out this year, but if that's the case, there may be a few more interesting implications about Nintendo's plans for this year as well, so that's what we'll be diving even further into today. These days, more and more people are working from home, playing at home for longer stints, and while that may be great, all that time sitting down, not moving around, just isn't good for you long term, which is why I would strongly recommend picking up a standing desk. A standing desk is a desk that you can sit at, but also you can change the elevation and stand at. Which is why I was very excited to talk about this premium standing desk, the E7 from today's sponsor, Flexispot. Flexispot offers all sorts of different sizes, colors, designs for different desks. But this one in particular, the E7, I'm really liking. There's a great amount of space here, not just lengthwise, but depthwise as well. The surface feels quality, and it's smooth, it's comfortable to the touch, and of course, it adjusts quite well too. It's pretty simple to change around the different elevations, and once you find that perfect elevation, or perhaps there's multiple depending on the circumstance, you can save that exact elevation for future use with the memory button. It can even hold up to 355 pounds. These desks are great for those who work at home or are trying to get in long gameplay hours while still keeping that blood flowing, so I strongly recommend checking out the E7 Premium Standing Desk from Flexispot. There will be a link in the description below. So shoutouts to Hugo Gaming on Twitter who asked Nate the Hate this question. Nate the Hate, do you have any information about the next 3D Mario? Nate responds, nothing I'm going to share at present. And at face value, you might say, well, that doesn't mean that much, but there is an implication here. Saying that he has nothing to share at present suggests that he does have something to share, but he's not going to share it now. Now, you might argue that that's reading too far into things, but when you look at the thread here, you see RGT85, a known friend of Nate the Hate, responds with this Mario gif of Mario freaking out, and Nate responds Mamma Mia with another gif right there, and it just kind of seems the general overall sentiment in this thread is that yes, Nate is implying here that he has something, but not something he's going to share currently. Now, the thing about Nate the Hate, in recent times when it comes to first-party things from Nintendo, he has been more cautious about sharing information about this stuff until it's closer to announcement, and that might have something to do with why he's not sharing what he's heard about 3D Mario now. But he did have his podcast predicting how Nintendo's year was going to go back in January, and let me play you this clip here.
I think the big holiday game from Nintendo in 2026 is going to be a 3D Mario game. It's what they need right now, and I know a lot of people say, oh, but Donkey Kong was made by a lot of the Mario Odyssey team. No, it was a younger team, it was its own team. 3D Mario team, still free to do their own thing. And I think 3D Mario will be that holiday game this year.
And so in this clip, Nate predicts, doesn't leak, but predicts that 3D Mario will be the big title for Nintendo's holiday this year, but also says, definitively, that yes, the Donkey Kong Bonanza team is part of the Mario Odyssey team, but it's not the entire Mario Odyssey team. The Mario Odyssey team has become two different teams, as I've been arguing for quite some time. If you look at the credits for Donkey Kong Bonanza, many key members are not there, so we do have public evidence to suggest that yes, there are two different teams here, and also there's just simply the history of 3D Mario being readily available early on for every single Nintendo generation. I think it's a very important point to highlight, even though I've been highlighting it a lot lately, because I continue to see people think that because of Donkey Kong Bonanza, especially after we just got more interviews about Donkey Kong Bonanza's development from GDC, that there is not going to be a 3D Mario soon. But if they were made by separate teams, then Donkey Kong Bonanza should really have little to no impact on the development time for 3D Mario. But anyway, a lot of people have looked very deeply into Nate the Hate's predictions. He does leak things. He did leak things during that podcast, but if you pay attention to how things are worded, he will say, I have heard this, which is him saying he's heard some sort of inside information about a particular project. This is usually for third-party stuff. And for all the Nintendo stuff, he just says he thinks. So let's keep that in mind here, that podcast, while it did have some leaks, were his predictions. However, many have considered the possibility that Nate's not going to outright leak the Nintendo stuff now early on, but if he's heard something, he will still predict it. And with what we just got over the course of this weekend on Twitter from Nate, it does suggest that maybe his prediction was based off something he's actually heard. Now, if you find yourself enjoying my videos and you haven't subscribed already, I have this goal. I would very much appreciate your support. Liking and commenting would be very helpful, too. Now, what further fuels this thinking, though, is that there was something else that Nate had predicted during this podcast that seemed kind of odd, and that was a definitive edition for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But then a week or so later, this popped up, and that's that on Spotlight, Caitlin Thorburn, the voice actress for Cosmos in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, updated that she has something going on in 2026 for Xenoblade Chronicles under the role of Cosmos, which suggests that there's gonna be a game, a Xenoblade game, where Cosmos will be involved coming out this year. This wouldn't be the first time a voice actor, when updating their page, has accidentally leaked something coming out from Monolith Soft. But also, interestingly, this seems to support the prediction, and I'm saying that with air quotes, for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Definitive Edition by Nate the Hate. Because the only Xenoblade Chronicles game that has Cosmos is Xenoblade Chronicles 2, because it has all these different blades, and they put Cosmos in there as a little bit of a reference to the past. Maybe somehow there's a new Xenoblade game coming out, but this Definitive Edition thing really does seem to make a lot of sense, even though I do feel like it's a bit early, but perhaps that's what they're doing to tide things over until their next new project is ready. And I'm referring to specifically from Monolith Soft. We've been theorizing about their next big new IP, Project Legacy. That may not be quite ready, but if we get a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Definitive Edition in the meanwhile, that would be pretty nice. But anyways, what we're hearing from Nate here on Twitter and this voice actress leak seems to suggest that these predictions during this predictions podcast may be more than just predictions. Another one that's interesting is where Nintendo tweeted out Zelda remake a couple months ago, and Nintendo is known for teasing things in this fashion. Now, what Zelda remake could that be? Well, Nate the Hate did predict a Oracle of Ages and Seasons remake in his podcast, which I actually think would be very exciting. And if all these releases are planned for the second half of the year along with a few others like the Dustbloods and Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, I think that's suggestive of a pretty good year by Nintendo. Maybe not the best ever, but I don't think we need the best year ever. I think what Nintendo needs to do is just be more consistent than they were even during the Switch era. So, something that I think gets kind of overlooked, and I've made this point before, but people just look at the headline and don't listen to the actual words that are being said. While I do think Nintendo has had a fairly weak start to the year, and they're only appealing to the cozy audience with their own offerings, I do think Nintendo's in a position to overall offer up a more consistent quality lineup than Switch 1. So, Switch 1's 2017, I think almost indisputably, is the best output we've ever seen from Nintendo in a single year. And the first year of Switch 2, I would say, is not as good as Switch 1's first year. But Switch 2 was only out for 7 months of the year, so a little bit less time, and I still think it's pretty good with things like Donkey Kong Bonanza, Mario Kart World, and yes, even Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I actually still think it's a good game. Maybe it doesn't measure up to expectations, but I still think it's a pretty good game. Either way, most would agree that Nintendo's 2025 is not as good as Nintendo's 2017. But if you look at Switch 1's 2018, the year was pretty dry and light until we got to the holidays where we got Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. A fantastic close to 2018, but the rest of the year wasn't so great. I would actually argue that 2018 overall was a pretty weak year, one of the weakest years for Switch 1. And considering Switch 2's year so far, we just got Pokopia, we're going to get Tomodachi Life in a few weeks here, we're going to get Yoshi, but then Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, likely Splatoon Raiders, the Dustbloods, and if Nintendo fits in a few other cool things like maybe a 2D Metroid remake, a 2D Zelda remake, and the next epic 3D Mario, that's going to be a pretty good year, and I would say it would be a far more balanced year than Switch 1's 2018. And if Nintendo comes around and puts out a strong 2027, and I'm not here trying to say that 2027 is going to be the best year in Nintendo gaming of all time, but if it's a pretty good year, if it's up there, then all of a sudden we're looking at a scenario where Switch 2 maybe didn't have the strongest first year ever, but it still had a pretty good first year, but then also a pretty good second year and a pretty good third year. It's just overall more balanced and better paced than the Switch 1 generation. I think Nintendo has that opportunity here, even though I am on the record as saying that personally, how Nintendo's handled the beginning of the year I feel has been a little weak. That doesn't mean when it's all said and done, it won't be an overall well-balanced year. And so these latest comments from Nate the Hate do give me more optimism here. I think there's public evidence to support a lot of this, but getting this potential implication from Nate the Hate, who's considered to be one of the most reliable insiders there are, that helps certainly a great deal. Now, something else I want to dive into here to add a little bit more to this discussion, and I'm sure some people are going to be wondering about this, is the Nash Weedle element. Now, right now, Nash Weedle is under a lot of scrutiny because they had said there would be a direct by the end of March, either February or March, where they even had some extra sources leaning towards February, which did not happen, but they said they heard there would be a general direct that would have the reveal for 3D Mario to come out this year as the big holiday title, and also the next project from Monolith Soft. Now, the Monolith Soft stuff was actually being said before all the Nate the Hate things, so if we do get the next Monolith Soft announcement, like their actual next new proper project in the next general direct, not a partner showcase, not a Mario Galaxy movie direct, not a Tomodachi Life direct, but a general direct, then I would say he'd be deserving of points for that. And the 3D Mario thing, I'm sure some people are going to argue. They'll say, oh, 3D Mario is always obvious. Other people were indicating potentially 3D Mario. But Nash Weedle was the first to leak that it would be coming out for this holiday, and he also last year said that we weren't getting 3D Mario, but instead would be getting a Donkey Kong game before that was announced. So Nate the Hate backing up this idea of 3D Mario being the big holiday closer for this year might help to support Nash Weedle's claims. At the same time though, that direct stuff in terms of timing seems really off. Maybe somehow we still get a direct in March, but as I've been saying, I'm growing more and more skeptical of this. And at the very least, I will tell you that if we do not get a direct, a general direct by the end of March, where we have this 3D Mario project and this Monolith Soft project, which could be a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Definitive Edition, if we do not get that, then my perspective on Nash Weedle will shift. I'm not saying they don't have sources. I think we've looked over the history of things, and it's highly evident that they have, at least in the past a year or two, have had some significant sources and have gone a lot correct, and they can still continue to get a lot correct. But they've also been wrong at times, and it seems like when it comes to timing, there is a consistent inaccuracy in terms of timing here. So if we don't get this general direct in March, I'm going to take a step back and wait to see if any of his claims start to pan out. Now, let's say the direct doesn't happen in March, but it happens in April, May, or June, whenever. After March is the main point here, and we do get that 3D Mario announcement, and we do get that Monolith Soft announcement. I would then be like, well, hold on, he did say that these would come in the next general, his timing was just off. I would understand why people would be very skeptical, but if his other claims also pan out, like the Super Metroid remake thing, then I think we should be paying attention, but just be aware that in the past, more than once, Nash has been off with the timing. But the content, the actual games, the projects that he's hearing about, could be legitimate. This is with the assumption we see his claims proven true this year. We shall see. But anyways, those are my thoughts on this rumor mill for 3D Mario and more coming this year. What do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. this is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.